2023, which is a fifth week in the month of January. Grateful to be able to be here with you. We're focused on the digital world and primarily around the new web infrastructure that went live over this last week. Thank you for joining us. For those that are here, simple new tool review for the first 30 minutes and then Q&A for the following 30 minutes. We do have a full support staff from Elle to Wally to Terrence if there's support topics that are needed. Otherwise, this is not necessarily intended as a support-based meeting. I do know that there's some folks that may have some questions related to that, and you're welcome to just make sure that you get set up and you're happy and you're good to go. So thank you for those that have joined and taking your time. This is a private membership association, and things we'll talk about herein are based upon that. Some of the things we'll talk about are forward-looking statements on a simple model combining decentralized phones with decentralized storage and in what that can mean for the future of humanity. The model is simple. You basically connect in decentralized storage, which means it's not one client server architecture. It's lots of different systems that all work as one, and they're not centrally controlled. And then you have your encryption keys and your access device from your phone that basically connects into those. And we'll talk a lot about not just necessarily a centralized Clear phone or Freedom phone or Armor phone, but other types of phones that are out there in the industry. For those that are joining that are come from the Clear United ecosystem, you've had the opportunity to tell friends and family, and you still have it. It hasn't changed, but there is an approach to work directly with governments, which is the go-to-market strategy from day one. So we're thankful for those that are literally continuing to seek to understand and then be understood based upon this simple model. Without spending a lot of time, by the way, we are streaming, and I'll show everyone kind of so they can see how it works. We are streaming on different, this is Clear One, for those that have not used it. It's a replacement for basically Zoom and then some. So we replace with Clear One what folks do on Zoom, Google, whether you're talking about Gmail, Calendar, Contacts, Chat, and then a lot of other management tools that do projects and workflow. So you can kind of see we've got 3 meetings that are actively running here. And then you'll also have countries and ecosystems that can have their own systems. And then you can see different parts and pieces of them. We won't jump into them for privacy's sake, but basically we're grateful for all those different ecosystems that are out there. I'm going to try and pull open to see. If you do have questions, you can always interrupt. Anyone, anytime, please feel free. That we're all in this together. No question's a dumb question. A lot of the folks are in one or two of them. But we're going to jump right into it. So basically, everything that you see here is live and 100% new. So we're not just talking about sovereignty for humanity. We're talking about decentralized digital governance for humanity, which will enable a lot more than sovereignty. Asset management, asset protection from generation to generation. Land management, which really some cultures look at land as an asset that we've been given and we have a stewardship over, and it can't be sold. Some look at it as it's to be sold and governed and basically, I wouldn't say monopolized or materialized, but that's in effect what it has been. And they're different parts of the world that have different perspectives. It just so happens today we're joining you from one of those that literally doesn't sell land. It leases land. And that's in these islands, the islands of the Pacific, which we'll spend a large chunk of our time focus on wonderful people from these different parts of the world. For those that have been joining month over month, week over week, you've seen it basically become very real. And this site is the second time that it's been launched. First time, the first version of it was June 20th, 2020. This is when was it, the 20th or 21st? It was June 21st, 2021. And this is basically the second iteration of that site. And it talks a lot about, some of the technologists that came together in 2009 to start building these systems that we talked about here, because this didn't just happen overnight, but basically bringing these together for future generations. So we're thinking about it long term, But at the same time, we're already a decade into this, but this is the second version of the site. It literally went live last night. Feedback was sent in this morning. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of work that's gone into this point, but that's basically where it's at. So this model, you should see a similarity between this image and this image. And some of the reasons that this is important is monetary systems before colonialism, or the British or the folks from Netherlands or the England ever came into different parts of the world that we're currently in, they would use tusks, pig tusks, and other things like that, whether there were types of beads or others. In South America, where a gentle, or it's not a gentlewoman, or a wonderful lady talked about, they would use different things such as like cocoa and different elements there. But the key is value. What is perceived as value? So we'll talk a lot about that. And basically, we're talking about something where people have been waiting for systems like this, and not just let's see what centralized systems hand us, because there are very intelligently organized ecosystems that are in the world today that are with intent trying to, they won't come out and say they're trying to enslave humanity, but they're trying to definitely control humanity. And through that, controlling is a form of enslavement. And ultimately, it takes away freedom and choice. And choice is one of the biggest things that we've been given, which I won't talk about creators or others, but what I will talk about is countries, nations, and communities around the world adopting this Declaration of Unity. If you haven't read the Declaration of Unity, please do so. You can find it under governance here. So this governance link, you can find it there. We'll talk a little bit about that as we move on. You've already, Phil Lane, so this is a concept that's already been there, but very good video. It has been updated. There's some additions there as well. But this is an ecosystem that is not based upon a small group of people or even a centralized group of people. The goal is to build it so that it's controlled by many. It's voted on by many. It's accessed by many. Not a few to many, but many to many. So we hope that you embrace it. You understand what digital organizations are, digital businesses are, digital assets. And as you continue to use this, it may provide very valuable insights into where, some folks really understand cryptography. Some have just heard the word Bitcoin. We really believe that Bitcoin is a very good litmus test and a proof point for what humanity could do with technology and innovation for future. But it's got to be organized in such a way where it's not just something that you set and forget, but it actually has a structure to how the management, I should say the governance, which is decentralized, how councils can come together, how voting can come together, how technology and innovation can actually serve humanity instead of enslave us. So very, very big important points there. The technology itself runs on different phones that are decentralized, from the Freedom Phone to the Clear phones to the Armor phone. But it's also available in download in this digital life format where you can actually see it and download it from any Android phone. One thing that you'll notice, so you basically, any Android phone can grab this file here if they were to download it. It's also available in the Google Play Store as well as the Huawei Store. And eventually, I don't know if you saw this, yes, that's right, folks, we actually plan on building digital life for Apple. So that's a massive shift. That is something that we do plan on coming soon here. So, or you can always go and just buy the actual phones themselves. Actually, this is sold out and this is sold out, but the rest, there are 3 other models that you can still snag. This particular 420, we don't believe will last through the end of the month. So that may already be gone. And so these are just additional details. This talks a little bit about organizations. So a digital organization such as a trust or a company or a decentralized autonomous organization, which some folks in the crypto world know a lot about that. These organizations can basically have their own governance team that can be obfuscated. So the individuals are decentralized themselves, but they have the ability to actually verify who they are and literally crypto. But it's not just just the individuals, the companies themselves can actually cryptographically have their own identity and IDs, which will then tie to things in the future as well. And then payments can be tied to these different organizations or these different assets. So that's really to understand the digital nation or a digital asset can have a payment that is tied to it and a value exchange that can actually tie to that. And then imagine the ability to combine that with literally not just a digital identity or a digital passport, but a physical identity and a physical passport that links. And imagine something that parallels what's called the real ID in the physical world. Like when you go through an airport, by 2025, they want everybody to have an ID that's called a real ID. And what they have some characteristics to them, but they don't have any kind of encryption or a reputation system that is tied to them, which we'll talk a lot about over the next. And that's another thing that's actually happened this last week. For the first time, I was able to see some of the digital reputation systems actually start working. So this is not a good week to talk about that, but we have more than enough content. So literally imagine a and digital type citizenship that both of them together. Imagine land management, whether it's managing the land, stewarding the land, leasing the land, managing proper ownership of the land, if the jurisdiction has that. But I hope you're understanding some of the big topics that are basically included in this digital world. So you kind of see it all combined into one, and it's got local apps or remote apps, such as Clear apps from third-party providers. And when people look at the digital world, they may see this ecosystem of these Clear companies. They're just the first service providers, which will show you some of the other ones. A dispute resolution system that's also built in. So in different councils that basically can tie together, convene together, vote together, or from a decentralized autonomous standpoint. And you don't even need to, people don't need to know who's voting, but they can verify cryptographically that they did vote. So thank you for joining us. This is actually the ecosystem here. And that's basically the main page of the site. You'll notice that they have this tabation down at the bottom that kind of walk you through the different sections. So if we're going from here, this ties to the different section here with governance. And so you can see that Declaration of Unity, a very important document. As a matter of fact, over the last 10 days, it's been put up in multiple different organizations where people have been able to see it, sign it, understand it, and then it'll have a special resting place once that initial signing and launching is actually complete. So tune in for future weeks to actually see where that resting place is. But it's actually coming to an end. You can also sign it and sign up for these councils just right here online, which we'll talk, like literally, we'll talk a little bit about. If you want, I can pull into it real fast and then come back. So let's say that this is a particular responsibility council. Actually, I'm going to try and jump into all of them at the same time. So you see different councils, you can register for those, and it'll actually pull up a cryptographic or a QR code that'll let you cryptographically sign in. So if I had my phone, I just sign into this, and it will automatically sign me up for this particular, let's say this Digital Safety Council. So you can kind of see who's already there, who will be coming in, and then inside of your dashboards, you can actually see others. But I'm going to go ahead and go back. I'm going to scroll all the way down so you can kind of see how the tabation works. So we've got the Declaration of Unity. Scroll down to the bottom as well. And then it jumps into digital life. Digital life is what we just talked a little bit about. Goes through 3 simple steps to set it up. This is primarily on any Android phone. The phone that is particular, and it can be, Clear Life works with any Clear phone, as well as, you know, the Clear Wallet and other apps. But there's a digital version of those technologies in the digital world. Now, they won't have some of the hardware encryption that is built into the Clear phones. You'll have your weakest link will be your operating system that is actually on your phone. But we'll talk a little bit about the difference between, you know, a digital life and digital app, or digital life or Clear Life as we move into it. So digital identity, notice that you've got a digital surname as well as digital payments integrated in that links the fiat world, so like MasterCard or Visa or American Express or Discover, into the actual digital world. Um, this just talks a little bit more about the things that we've already gone over, and then it steps you through to the next section. So this particular one is ClearOS Mobile and all the different apps that are there, and this will link you to clearos.app, and then this will link you to clearos.com, which is where the server-based apps are. So there's over 140 different apps in the server side, so ClearOS server ecosystem, and then there's about 150,000 mobile apps. So a lot more apps. These are just the decentralized versions, but it runs basically any Android-based app that's there. So you can link through that. Those will open up new tabs for that. This goes through basically software developers that want to develop normal Android-based apps that are based on decentralized architecture and technology. They can do that with this system. We talk a little bit about these decentralized phones. We've already touched on them. One of the biggest keys of primarily of some of these phones is the contacts and how they actually pop up in a very different, unique way. So you can kind of see, oh, it doesn't show you here. There's a difference of what can be exposed versus not exposed, or what's seen, or how communication systems can actually work. And what those contacts or other systems can do is you can connect in with other people without using a phone number or an email address, but you do it with an obfuscation layer that's unique to you. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in future dialogue as well. But this login, so if you haven't used the digital world, this is basically how it works. So you can kind of see up here another, if you click here, you can see that it exposes a login. Then you use your phone with that ClearLife application to actually log in. No usernames, no passwords, but you're cryptographically logging in and proving your identity. It's one of the reasons this technology will take over. It's just a matter of time for adoption. And it doesn't matter if it takes a long time. As a matter of fact, I think the longer the time it takes, the more stable these systems and mature they can get over time. But imagine notary type services with remote folks that basically verify not just who the individual is, but maybe an address, or maybe an ID, or maybe you're closing on something or purchasing something. So that process can actually be done digitally and cryptographically proved and then proven. So imagine title companies that use this. Imagine, if you have to actually go and get something online, maybe it's something I won't even talk. Well, yeah, I won't even go there. So we'll step off of that for a second. We've touched a little bit about on the digital ID. That they basically then ties to the digital world around authentication. Once you authenticate with that digital ID, you can then get other things such as a company. And that company can then have different assets. And it doesn't have to be cryptographic-based assets. It could be tied to physical elements that you actually want to buy or sell. And then you can have different currencies that are also based upon that. So let's say a company accepts certain types of currencies and wants to buy certain types of assets. You can literally drag and drop, super seamless. Or let's say this organization has votes where they want to actually see a cryptographic vote based upon everyone that's a member of that organization. You can see that. You can see ownership. You can see membership. You can see who actually manages it, because those are all different. So you can have different managers and different members and different owners all within an ecosystem that's cryptographically proven. Show me one system inside of any kind of colonial-based system, whether it's an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, you name it. It just doesn't exist. Even a DAO-based system, a decentralized autonomous organization, doesn't have the ability to cryptographically add other members, add other owners, and then distribute assets in real time, and then show that based upon whatever the organization is or the asset is. Then this talks a little bit about how we were connecting in the digital world with physical. So imagine someone jumps through the hoops to prove their digital identity and then goes through the process to prove their physical identity. Imagine those ecosystems being able to be linked together and being one of the most powerful identity systems that's actually managed by the individual and not centralized systems. Very, very important for the future of humanity, especially because most of the systems today, they talk about, oh, this thing's got two-factor authentication. Well, what most people don't know is whoever's giving you that two-factor authentication actually knows what your second factor is. And you know what? They actually hold the keys to it too. So if you don't believe me, just ask whatever favorite search engine or friend who owns the cryptographic keys from Apple, who owns them from Google, who has access to them, who owns SSL search. So basically secure socket layer search, like with a web browser. When you look up here, you see this little guy here. Who says that this is secure? Who says that the certificate is valid? Well, it's a combination of the browser, which, by the way, if you haven't noticed, this is a clear web browser. So this is actually a browser that has its own capability. It actually issues, as well as ClearOS server can issue its own search, but who says that it's actually valid or not? And then those keys behind it, who actually owns those? So when you really start understanding, GoDaddy, Network Solutions, all these top-level domain providers that actually issue SSL certs and go into different jurisdictions, those different jurisdictions actually require them to share, in some cases, their private master key that's at the top level of those SSL certs. Conversation, but it's very easy to review with a couple simple searches. You can also register a domain within this ecosystem, so up to 430 different domains. These are top-level domains like, let's say, .com or .biz or .inc or .tv. These are different top-level domains that tie to it. So digital assets. We've talked a little bit about these, but this is very exciting and huge. The assets also have a reputation. The organization has a reputation, and the individual has a reputation. Those are some of the things that we actually started seeing the first lines of development happening this last week, which is it's just beautiful to see it all come together. It really is. Grateful for those that dedicate their lives and their time to make this become a reality. The assets can break into different classes, not just token, reward, or coin. I'll zoom in on this so you can kind of understand exactly what I'm talking about. So these are three different types: token, reward, or coin, and there's many others as well. But you can tie the assets to those, and then they have a futuristic capability. For instance, 2 weeks ago, we were online live in this same medium with a full-blown country that is looking to adopt this technology as a part of the fabric of their country. And they were contemplating, how much do we issue as far as a currency? They have their own currency for their country. And one of the big questions is, what's the quantity that you issue versus authorize? And then how do you actually change that in the future? And we came up with a solution this last week. We'll show you this next week. Right now is not the right time, but it is beautiful to actually see.
Michael?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us what the difference is between a token and a coin, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look here, you kind of see a typical, on the bottom you have time, on this vertical axis you have value. So you see value shifting over time. In some cases it's going down, in some cases it's going up. Then you have a flat line based, in some worlds they'd call it a stable coin. And usually what you do is you tie it to a certain type of value within a currency. So you select a currency. Maybe it's tied to Australian dollar or the mark or the yen or the renminbi or the US dollar. And that creates a baseline, okay, that you would measure this particular. So this is in US dollars. So you can see here that you would have $1 is equal to one reward, okay? And then down here, you'd have maybe a token, which could actually have a value that fluctuates. And you can see here, there was a split. So that value continues, but you also had something that converted. Maybe it's 1-for-1 for a token for a coin, which would be like a coin would represent like a security, something that is a publicly available digital asset, kind of like what you would find on the stock exchanges, so Frankfurt or New York Stock Exchange, etc. So it's a public asset, is a coin, a security, and maybe that goes through a registration process. Maybe it can be automated, maybe it can't, but there's a reputation behind it, which also, and not only that, but you can actually identify how they change hands You may not know the hands that they go to, but you know when they change hands, what's the quantity, and that they were changing hands, so to speak. So these are three different assets. In green, we've got token, and that's really kind of like a fair market value that's set based upon a body. Maybe it's a leadership team. A good example of that would be like a stock option. So if you were working for a private company that started up in May of 2023, I guess that's a couple months away, and you capitalize this business with a digital based token, you could literally provide value and see who owns it and how it actually gets disseminated. And then over a period of time, let's say March, these guys go through an IPO. So instead of an ICO, which a lot of different tokens represent, which by the way, we personally believe 95% of them are just straight up ignorant is probably fraudulent is probably a harsh, but they're in between somewhere in there. So you've got a lot of different tokens that'll do an ICO, but then you've got a lot of different public assets that'll do an IPO. Well, imagine a compelling event there where you convert one for one into the other, and then basically public markets can come in here, private markets can come in here. But those are the three archetypes. So a token, a reward, and a coin. Does that make sense? Too long of an answer? Too many details?
I'm just not clear. Because I hear the terminology all the time, a token and a coin. I know what a stable coin is. USDT is a stable coin, USDC, there's a few stable coins. But I can't put my head around.
Let's say it a different way and say it with just a couple simple words. A token is like a stock option. It's private. It's not.
Oh, okay.
A coin is like a security. So
Okay.
like a stock that you would buy on, like if you wanted to buy Apple stock or Nike stock, that's like a coin. It's a security.
Okay.
So it has a fair market value to it. And then a reward. And the reason that the rewards are tied to this and not currencies, you can actually create like a dollar, but those are reserved usually for countries. So if a country wanted to create its monetary policy or its financial system on this, they would actually create a dollar, which would then be either pegged to their own dollar or be pegged to whatever. Like for instance, the folks in Atutaki or Rarotonga or the Cook Islands basically tied to the New Zealand dollar. They don't worry about their own currency, but if they did, they would be pegged to the New Zealand dollar. Or Vanuatu has their own currency that floats at their own value. And then, like Tuvalu, they have a currency that is actually a physical currency, but it's actually tied to the Australian dollar. So I don't want to confuse you even more, but it really, when you really net out all of the financial systems, all of the asset systems and lending systems, this actually makes it a really simple. The examples are very simple. So if you're starting a business, you're not going to create a stable coin or asset. You're not going to create a public security. You're going to create a private token. And then there'll be a compelling event where that private token can actually be sold on public markets like a security. And then it converts into a token to a coin.
Okay.
Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, it's a little bit easier for me to grasp.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I know there's a lot of moving parts, but it's like economics course 101. And then the nice thing is these rewards can actually then tie to fiat cards. So it's just like you have a bank account that actually has a certain currency in it that then ties to a card. It's like a prepaid debit card where there's Visa, American Express, MasterCard, Discover, that can then be paid in whatever currency, and then the foreign exchange rates kick in. Now, when you go fiat, you also have the networks that you're running on, like Visa. You have a fee for that, like 2.4%. You've also got taxation because it could be construed as income. And then you've also got potential issues with, well, I won't open up that can of worms yet, but I hope this makes sense as far as digital assets go. Any other questions on this particular page? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Digital wallet. This is how all those different assets are managed. So literally, if you create an asset, you can drop it in. If other people actually want to see it, they can convert it over. And then you can basically be able to send it. Super simple. It's not simple, but the way that the user experience with it is actually simple. And then imagine a system behind the scenes that is actually looking for real-time fraudsters. Maybe someone over in Ethereum that moved into this chain, or maybe they went from Cardano, or maybe they went from Bitcoin. They move into this digital world and they've done something that may be fraudulent in that ecosystem and it gets reported. You can actually tie it into this. Or maybe you're seeing certain folks that have an activity that doesn't feel right. You can actually have forensic systems that's actually intelligently looking at them and doing analysis of them, both off-chain and on-chain, for types of fraud. Now, this is really important in a digital ecosystem because it needs to run with a non-biased perspective. So it needs to be able to just autonomously, create analysis and responses to them, and then impact in a positive or negative way reputation. Reputation today isn't necessarily tied to the forensic system, it's tied to an individual. So let's see if we can look at this. So an individual, let's say they run a bunch of apps, okay? And these apps then report into a system. People say, I want to actually weight these a certain way. Once they set it up, the credit, it's a dynamic credit rating system based upon what the individual wants to share versus what the other one that's issuing a credit wants to actually acknowledge. So I hope to show you more about that in the future. But again, we talked about an individual has their own reputation. A organization has their own reputation. So that's like a company. And then an asset has its own reputation. They could all be different, but I hope this is clicking for you because it's really important. This is actually an interface to what I was just talking about. So let's say that people have certain apps and they're saying they're not sharing the data within the apps, but they're sharing data points about it. So let's say that people let's say they want to share how many times they actually put their finger on a phone and log in, okay? That's a unique identifier. And then let's say someone on the other side says, I actually want to weight that as something that's very, very important. Some people say, I don't really care about that. But once they set that up, what it does is it sets up a dynamic identity credit system around reputation. And this is for the individual in particular. The ones around an asset and around an organization are dynamic based upon that forensic system that we just talked about. So I hope that made a little bit of sense to you. This particular reputation probably doesn't until you can start using it, but it's
So
here.
Michael, am I understanding that the reputation of an asset would eliminate an asset that misrepresents itself or has a fraudulent twist to it?
Yeah, so let's say, well, I'm going to use a jacked up analogy. It'll probably confuse you more than anything, but I'm going to do it. So let's say that a $100 bill in the United States, okay? Supposedly, a Federal Reserve has a right to create this. Bonds are sold, it's created, it's got a serial number, it's put into circulation, and 10 years after it's put into circulation, maybe it's changed hands 5 times, okay? How do we know it was really created and verified and it's really changed hands and who has it and maybe where it's located, those types of things? We don't really know that today. But
right
now let's throw this out there. What if someone created a counterfeit $100 bill?
Right,
okay?
Exactly.
So they throw it out there. Now it's into circulation. People are actually accepting it, using it, and you don't know who accepted it. You don't know where it came from. Remember back in Cops and Robbers days when they'd throw this little die thing inside the bag, and if the robbers would run off with the bag of money, it would go off, or it'd have a little locator on it, or they could track the serial numbers. That stuff's not real. maybe on like a fringe case of 0.0005% of the time would that actually be impacted. But in the ecosystem that we're talking about with the forensic system in the digital world, it's real time. So for instance, an asset created by, let's say it's an asset or an asset for a piece of land. Heavens forbid they're actually selling the land. Or maybe it's an asset for a car. You want to pass a car from one generation to another generation or from one buyer to a seller. You can literally do that with this type of a system. So you have an individual back up top that logs into the digital world. They're automatically building this reputation just based upon using a phone and some apps, just like these apps down here. They're using the apps, they're using the phone, they're sending messages, they're making calls, they're using the phone, and it's literally, they're logging into it, they're moving around, they're building their own reputation, okay? And then they actually log in and create a reputation for a business or an organization. Let's say it's a trust. And let's say that trust creates a house as a digital asset. And then that digital asset owns, and let's say they own it outright, okay? There's not a bank involved. There actually is a play with a bank and title and all this other stuff. But let's just say that there is just a home that's 100% outright, and an individual is 90 years old. They're ready to pass. Let's say they've got 3 kids. They want to pass it on to their spouse first. And if once their spouse passes, then it can go a 33% to each kid. And if one kid says, you know what, maybe I need a little bit of value right now, another kid can say, hey, I'll cash you out for that. They transfer the asset. Or let's say there's a compelling event around death. And instead of going into probate, that asset can actually shift from one owner to another. And the value of that asset and reputation of that asset can be dynamically created through that forensic account. So for instance, if you've got individuals that have assets in their wallet and they're holding them for a period of time, or maybe they're transferring a lot, all of these different things without having triggers. Let's say a dispute resolution system comes in and says, hey, this actually needs to be claimed over here. It wasn't ever transferred. And you actually have a precedence with a governing authority that we've agreed to in a let's say an arbitration that actually says that percentage of this asset, let's use that home, should have been transferred over. You can actually ding the value not only of the individual's reputation, but potentially of the asset's reputation. So in the future, these things will actually mean something, kind of like a FICO score today means something. You have TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian that are credit reporting agencies that hold data from individuals that run it through this FICO scoring system. What people don't know is FICO, Fair, one dude, Isaac's another dude, company, Fair Isaac. That's how they basically got there. It's just 2 dudes got together and created an algorithm that then reporting agencies layered on top of. It's not complicated, but it is very, very, very wrong for centralized information agencies to collect massive data on populations and then put it in one database. We call that a honeypot in the security world, where if someone penetrates that one database, they literally get through millions of users of data. That's what happened with Equifax. And then the governments come in and say, hey, you can't sue them. We're indemnifying them. You can't go after them, even though they lost hundreds of millions of citizens' data. I'm talking social security numbers, addresses, neighbors, how you pay your bills, how you don't, all of that. So it's really a future financial, not just credit system, but reputation system at scale. Does this make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And it just, I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, how do we get this out there? How do we start living like this? What are we doing? I just found out, I just went to my Cairo and he was telling me how it's in place now for the digital ID in Canada.
Yeah.
Trudeau has gone 100 miles an hour implementing this digital ID.
Yeah.
And it's starting with our equivalent of your DMV. And we won't be able to get a license without this digital ID.
What if I told you, well, You're absolutely right. And this is a parallel system that is decentralized to that centralized system that you're talking about. What's crazy is my roots. I'm born in Utah. And Utah will be one of the first states in the United States that implements, and they'll do it well. But what they're doing is wrong. And I can honestly,
Yes.
I can factually tell you, we showed them these systems years, many, many years ago. We went to the state, we found the right people, we reached out to them. They could care less. They have their marching orders, they're putting these systems in, and it's their job, right? They get paid to do it, but they don't understand how they're actually enslaving society because they're doing it based upon centralized systems. And it's not just around health. Like you've got centralized health in Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. It's
Yep.
so much bigger than health. I mean, that's one of the where health, I should say, the physical body and the digital body come together with decentralized systems. You can actually have something that is beautiful. With centralized systems, you have slavery, you have control, you have, last February, the Biden administration, I won't talk about that, basically enacted programmable money. So you talk about what's going on in Canada. Imagine if you don't comply a certain way, you can't travel anymore. You
Oh no,
can't.
that's coming.
Yeah.
That is so coming. It's right around the corner, Michael. And you know what? Their marketing is convenience, and it's going to make your life easier, and people are buying it.
It's mind blowing, isn't it? It's just mind blowing. It's I walked by a group of people yesterday that were in the audience of this thing and watching it, and I just watched how memorized they were on the stage, and it was just it was, on one hand, it was very hard to see, disheartening, hurts. On the other hand, eye opening. But what's really important to remember is that's a part of why a choice really matters. And just
Yeah.
because you could say, well, they're a byproduct and it's shifted their body and the way they think and from what they're eating and from what they've injected and from, it's even bigger than that, because the systems in the future are actually going to understand. Now, this may sound really weird. What you think, where you go,
Yes.
how you
Yes.
feel, what you
Yes.
intend. What if what I just said is a reality within a decade? Right now, 50 years ago, they came out with lie detector tests, right? What if a lie detector test was actually wired up to you and you didn't think the right thing and a consequence became a reality? That's not far off. I don't know. I can't spell out a little bit more than I on that particular topic, but for those that have been following, just look at the Clear Health. Look at you know what? Here, I'll show this to you. I'm going to go to clear.co.com. I'm just going to click on, let's say, Clear United, but I'm actually going to remove United. I'm going to put in Health. There's a reason that Health isn't here. We'll run to Health, and then there's a couple documents I'm going to show you. One, look at the work that this Linda Jordan has actually done through her life, as well as this gentleman here. I won't be specific, okay? And this guy is like the grandfather of it. Amazing, amazing heart and human. Speaking of that, Wally, can you give me a reminder to reach out to Roy this next week? So this document here and this slide deck here. So this document will actually go through. It's a teal paper for Clear Health.
I read it.
What was your perspective of what you read here?
I'm using some quantum energy healing devices, and I have been for some time. And I just, our bodies, I think, are the most incredible computers that ever was, and they can heal themselves. And everything that we've been doing for the last century, and I'm sure more, we're destroying our bodies, we're destroying our minds. there's fluoride in our water. Well, that's dumbing us down. We're all freaking zombies. We can't think for ourselves anymore. It's all about control. It's just everything is about control. And I'm convinced that probably most people on the bottom rung have good intentions, but as you go up the pyramid, it just gets more and more sinister. And I don't want to live in this world. I don't know. This is how I want to live, is exactly what you're proposing. And I'm just scratching my head, wondering how we can bring this to the forefront, because I'm mind boggled how people are just asleep. I can't wrap my head around it. The information is there for all of us. Why are they drinking the Kool-Aid? I don't understand, Michael.
It's hard to understand and even fathom. One thing I can tell you, my heart was heavy, kind of like yours, for a long time, until I finally let go and just, there are bigger, every individual has their own choices, and collectively society has their own choice. If they want to choose to fight with nuclear weapons, that's their choice. If they want to choose to live in peace and happiness and care for one another and community, that's a choice. We can impact our own sphere, so our own body, our own mind, our own choices with what we do, whether we connect up with another human, create a family for what we do with that impacts our family. But then there's a point where we say, you know what? We can't just stand by and let society go off a cliff. But the choice is you just give them another path, another way forward. Where they go with it is still their choice.
Correct.
And the other thing that's really hard for me, but it's also brought a lot of peace, is time. If you take time out of the equation, many things can make sense. Hello, beautiful. It can all come together, and it's really not even going to happen in our own time. It's in another time. I won't be specific with a creator and phrases, but it will happen when it's supposed to.
Yeah, I know that, and I'm just trying to open my heart more and more and more. When I have a thought, I open my heart. When I have another thought, I open it. And the minute I set foot in Costa Rica, it was like I opened up a home.
It was wait. Back up a sentence. It was like you did what?
The moment I landed in Costa Rica,
yeah,
I felt like I had come home. The people, the mentality of the people, the warmth, the embrace, not even a physical embrace, energy. I just felt you there. And sure, like everywhere else, there's crime, there's some bad stuff, but on the whole, I coming from Canada and the energy in Canada, what's happening here and things there, it's almost like I was on another planet somewhere. And I just felt like I was home, and I knew it was my first time there, and this is where I belonged.
When are you moving there?
And in June.
Are you excited?
I am so excited. My cousin called me on the weekend, and she said, Danielle, I didn't talk to you very long, but she said, I had to call you and tell you that I have never heard you so alive before. She said, you're awesome. Radiating. So I want to share
just right in there.
This.
Yeah. Oh, this is just a computer with 3 monitors.
It's a computer.
Yeah, with three screens.
3 monitors, but the stand.
Yeah.
Where did the stand come from?
In here.
I know.
From him. Oh, I don't know.
Because I'm gonna go. Where would you go to find the stand? Because that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It does.
Because you can stand up, sit down.
Yeah. It's nice to meet you. It's good to see you out there cranking. It's good to see you out there writing.
Oh yeah, you see the wait, you see I'm gonna be ready. I'm gonna do
It's nice to meet you.
I get so the neck is like fighting right now, but normally I don't like it because it's just a come good and
Yeah.
enjoy it.
I'm gonna jump back on this call, okay?
Yes.
It's nice to meet you, and then
Take care.
some. Bye bye.
Bye.
That's a perfect example of what you're talking about. I mean, people just come up, they talk to you, they're kind, they're respectful. The but different cultures have different paces, and I would even say had different responsibilities that tie to some of the blessings that they've been given as well. But overall, humanity, it needs a different path forward, an honest path that's tied not to what they would call science. Even though
Right.
science is real, physics is real, but there's another level of what these folks are calling science. And when we talk about
Yes.
quantum entanglement, and we talk about
Yes.
some of the basic stuff, you know, this is called quantum medicine, which is really, it's really ties to this quantum electroderm. So QED is what Ron would talk about, or Roy would talk about it as, but very important technology that is naturally inside of us. We talk about how does our heart continue to just go? How
Without us doing anything.
yeah, I mean, our body's regulating, but there is an ability to link innovation and technology as we know it to simple yes or no questions. And when we link those yes or no questions to a system that's smart or has intelligence and even learning, and then you connect that into the body in real time, we're talking about real time, not just lie detectors, but real time communication with the body. And
Well, it's like all this quantum technology. I mean, the med beds. The med beds. The technology in the med beds is speaking to our bodies.
Yeah.
And working with our bodies to help our bodies heal themselves.
Well, some of the individuals that actually built, for instance, if you sit on a toilet, while you walk up to the toilet, it identifies who you are. When you sit on it and actually defecate or urinate in it, it actually can track your health. Not just, taking urine stool samples, but it can actually track so much more than that. It can take your weight, it can take your body index, all these different measurements they currently have, but so much more. And then over time, and it's not just one person, but many. That's a small advancement in health. But what if you can actually link that to communicate with the body? So, for instance, what makes people sad or stressed or happy? And then you tell these same people that are just going along with the program, hey, if you do this, we'll guarantee you're happy. And so that's basically where it's all going. It will physically connect with the digital world. The digital world will actually put us all in a centralized system. And what this digital ecosystem here is all about is not linking to the centralized system from humanity, but a decentralized system for humanity. So I hope that makes sense.
It makes sense, Michael. And here's my thing: is that I'm starving to understand all of this and integrate it so that I can share it intelligently with people. It's for me. I'll speak just for me. It's not easy to understand and integrate, and I can't share it if I don't fully understand. I mean, I think for you, you've been doing this for so long; it's in your DNA. But for me, I'm just learning all of this, and I want to so desperately to really sink my teeth into it and just get it. I hear the punchline of the joke, but I don't get the joke.
That's a good way to put it. That's a really good way to. You can see it, and you can taste it, but you can't explain it. It's like you can
Correct.
see the grain of salt, you can taste the grain of salt, but you can't tell someone what salt tastes like.
Yes.
So, but it in time, and that's why I keep saying, take time out of the equation, and all of this will snap together. It will fit together. It's not in our time, but in the right time.
Okay. Well put. And I will do that.
This
Thank
isn't.
you.
Thank you for being here, and just I know it may. I know it's probably frustrating to just say I know this is the right way, but uh, how do you come up with the right questions to ask, to then get the answers, to then click it in your head, and just thank you for continuing to engage and ask those good questions. This ties to some of the contacts. So imagine a decentralized system that actually has contacts that aren't stored within Apple or within Google, but they're stored within your own ecosystem and actually have a unique private key that also ties to different chains, from Ethereum to Bitcoin to Ripple to Stellar to Cardano and to the digital world. All of them. It can link to all those assets, whether they're fast or they're slow. It can link to voting systems, whether it's web-based, whether it's mobile-based. That took a lot longer to build than we originally anticipated. Imagine future services or even current services where cryptographic-based marriages can actually be performed and realized for people around the world. If they want to commit to one another, if they want to connect, if they also want to have maybe assets managed in an ecosystem or disputes managed in an ecosystem. Why is it that we just go into a state or a province and put our world in their hands when we know the judicial systems are garbage? They take way too long. They don't necessarily care about the individuals, and the value is not necessarily realized. And I'm not saying that every state is bad, but what I am saying is there's a different way. How can assets be tracked and managed? How can identities be tracked and managed? How can they be linked together? And then how does posterity come from that? And then how do assets transfer that posterity? And then how is it that not just today, but future generations can actually benefit from that? Not just around assets, but maybe around health, maybe around who we are, what our genes are. And can our genes modify over time? Is it something that's stagnant? Is it something that we can prove can actually happen? So these sites are now live. Imagine the ability to not just talk about vaccinations, but full-blown inoculations. And when you scan, for instance, if you want to go to the site, scan this, it'll pull up a report for this particular dummy individual that'll actually show what is their blood levels, what is their inoculation levels, what are they inoculated against, what are PGX tests looks like. So let's say they want to use some type of pharmaceutical. It can actually tell you if you have a propensity to react to certain things or not to react in a positive way or negative way. You've got people going and having double mastectomy because they're said that breast cancer is something that runs in their family. But imagine something that actually, and it was from those same PGX tests that thing came from. Imagine a world that doesn't have the taxation and slavery that the current system has. I'm not saying that all taxes are bad. As a matter of fact, sales tax, use tax, property tax, they're probably decent tax as long as those things are in consumption and used in the physical world. In the digital world, it doesn't have to be there. You don't need income tax or capital gains or property tax or payroll tax or asset tax or municipality tax. You can literally imagine if everybody voted and said, oh, well, we really need that. You can prove that the votes are there. Today, I would say that many millions of people and cultures walked away or died from taxation. The founding fathers of the United States of America would roll over in their grave if they saw what is being currently done. What's the difference from what they walked away from versus what's currently happening today? I'll just leave that question with you. But imagine the ability to actually have in the digital cryptographic world, all of your reporting can automatically be dynamic. And if you're crazy enough to have assets on centralized exchanges, such as these ones here and the FTX mess, you're going to get what's coming to you. You need to have your own assets in your own wallet with your own cryptographic keys. That's what a decentralized phone does for you. So we've come through about half of it. We're already way over our time. I'm going to stop here, even though we're only about through half of the update. Does anyone have questions or continued dialogue you want to run through?
Yeah, hi, Michael. It's Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, my question, you touched on digital assets, and I know that you can store some assets on ClearPay right now.
Uh-huh.
When will that start maturing more?
The digital assets can actually be dynamically seen within the ClearPay wallet today. Any of the digital assets that are within the digital world. So if it's like an Ethereum asset or a Bitcoin assets, those just get deployed as developers are available. But you can actually create digital assets in the digital world and dynamically see them. And anyone else with a digital wallet, a Clear wallet, can actually those as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
I believe so. Yeah.
you go
So for
Go
example, the coins that we had set up a few weeks ago, I could actually share those assets with anyone that has the ClearPay wallet.
That's right. That's right. You go in. Yep. You go in and just say view more. You find it, and then you have to follow it, and then it basically builds you a send and receive as a part of your digital asset wallet, and you can access it that way.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, buddy. It's good to hear from you.
Likewise.
Any
Nice
other?
view, though.
Oh, that goes two ways. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, I'll go ahead and jump to something that is important. This is fully live. So this is a digital world forum. It starts March 28th for 15 days. It actually sails from Sydney, Australia to Fiji. It also goes to Moorea, Samoa. It goes to Vanuatu. It goes to New Caledonia. And it ends in Tahiti. This is the agenda. So you can kind of see the different places. We will actually be doing things that are specific activities to the things that we talked about, but implementing them and showing them in real life. So please join this. It'll be a fun event. If you're concerned around vaccinations, have a simple conversation. There'll be activities that'll be on there, normal, worldly based activities, so to speak. But we'll also have every day we have a large theater that we'll basically gather in and go through unique activities. There will be clear nodes that will be won and given away through raffles. If you want to see prior experiences, go to this URL. I'll drop it inside. At least I'm trying to. It's hard to see. I can't see it for the online folks, but for the active folks, you should be able to see it now. But basically, it's still digitalworld.earth/digital-events. So please just run into that. And if you're interested, join the fun. If not, we'll see you on the next one. So don't feel like you've got to attend this. I know there's a lot of moving parts in society. It's especially around the vaccinations. And I know there's concerns there, but there are ways to be able to live in the world, but not of the world. So grateful for your time and your attention. We'll go ahead and wrap up. It is 6:42 on January 31st, 2023. Again, the 5th week of this wonderful month of January. Thank you for all you do, and we will see you next week, same time. Actually, we may be traveling next week. We might be in the air. As a matter of fact, I think we will be. If we're in the air and you join, we just will skip next week. It'll be the second time we've ever missed. So, but anyways, much love.